Tom Tugendhat.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was somewhat entertained there by the last lines about them being the new Trojans, which I suppose makes us the Greeks. Might be worth remembering the Greeks won the war and the current Greek government is generating employment while this government is cutting it. It might also be worth remembering that while we're telling stories, there are some really rather good books out there. None of them written by the Treasury team, it's true, but there was a rather good one that came out only recently on prosperity for growth, which was written not only by Dr. Laffer, whose name came up earlier from my honourable friend, but also by two members of the other place, the Lord Elliot of Micklefell, I think, and Lord Hinsey. I declare an interest on Lord Elliot, as his daughter is my goddaughter. But it is still a good book, despite the fact that there is a connection there. Because what it sets out is the principle that we all know, and by the way, that has been known for hundreds of years, that taxation deters investment, lack of investment deters growth, and lack of growth deters future opportunity to look after all of us, including, in particular, the poorest. And what we're seeing on the high streets is actually a reflection of that tax policy. Because what we're seeing on the high streets today is we're seeing the increasing ratchet of control. Control through regulation, control through taxation, control through any number of different tools that this government has put on. Now, in wonderful towns like Tunbridge and Edenbridge and Borough Green, and I'm sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, you could add a few of your own, it would be worth saying that Portsmouth itself and other places, I've got that completely wrong, haven't I? With the Honourable Lady...
There's a point of information I think it would help the honourable member. Romsey and Southampton North.
and this will explain why I was never welcome in the Navy. Anyway, the honourable lady will know that there are many other high streets that are, like Romsey and Southampton, doing well despite the policies that we're seeing out of this government. But we are seeing a series of changes that are costing us all, and I think it's worth focusing on a few of them. The first is on retail, hospitality and leisure properties, which we're now seeing the rate relief reduced to 40% and only up to a cash limit of £110,000 per business. Now, why is this happening? Well, this is basically just another tax grab. It's just another attempt to make sure that those who are working hard to put food on their tables, and by the way, to put food on the tables of everybody else in this country by generating that employment. I'll just finish the point, if I may. But while they are working hard to do that, this government is trying to squeeze them. Now, I understand why, because they've got themselves into a level of debt that is genuinely extraordinary, and they're piling it on even more and quickly than anybody... I'm just finishing my point, if I may. They are piling it on even more quickly than any other administration for a long time, with the exception of COVID, which I know members will agree they wanted to spend more on even still. What we're seeing is that squeeze hurting more and more. Now, I know of independent retailers in Tunbridge and Edenbridge who've seen, because of that, 300% increases in business rates as a result of this. And it's simply not sustainable. Because what we're talking about is taking money off businesses before they're able to pay those who are working there 24/7, those who own it. We're seeing that squeeze, that pain, that charge being put on individuals who are getting up early, who are trying to do their absolute damnedest to make sure that they can keep the business going. But it's completely absurd. And it's absurd because actually the £110,000 valuation is in fact artificial. Because business rates are set by the valuation office agency, forgive me. And there is no input for local businesses. There's no way for these decisions to be challenged, and there's no real accountability. So what we're seeing, I'm afraid, is we're seeing a government agency setting a valuation that allows the taxation to rise with no possibility of appeal. Now, this is simply no way to run an economy, because what we're seeing is ever-increasing centralisation. Now, the correct thing to do would not only be to allow businesses to keep some of the money that they're making in order to reinvest in themselves and to invest in staff, but actually to allow councils to have some say. Because if we believe in democracy. If we believe in individuals having the ability to shape their future, then surely we must extend that right to them to control how towns, how villages, how communities across our country are actually able to tax themselves. Now, sadly, that's not what we're seeing. And so, Madam Deputy Speaker, we're seeing what we used to describe as a nation of shopkeepers, that nation that defeated tyranny in Europe not once but many times, becoming a nation of bookkeepers. Bookkeepers all taxed by the state. I'll give way.
Thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. I'm glad he got to the point, kind of. He was speaking about hospitality workers, and I was a hospitality worker for very many years, so I know how hard work it is. And I also know about the people who will benefit on the shop floor from the government's employment rights bill. So perhaps the honourable gentleman could tell me a bit more about how regulation is supposedly harming workers, because from my point of view, as a former hospitality worker, I see the benefits of that employment rights bill for all of my former colleagues.
So I'd be delighted, because actually you can draw direct, Madam Deputy Speaker, you can draw a direct comparison with other countries that have extended these same rules. What they do is they protect the workers who are in the job, that is absolutely true, but they dissuade anybody else from joining, they dissuade new hires. So what you see is what you see exactly in the UK today. You see growing youth unemployment, and that's exactly what you're seeing in the United Kingdom, because when you have a punishment on a burden, on a business that makes it harder for them to change their employment structure, they simply delay employment. That's all that happens.
I thank him for his generosity in giving way. I really do, because I'm finding this debate very interesting, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the rural areas of my constituency, what we're actually finding is businesses who are really struggling to hire workers, not because of the cost, but because local workers can't afford to live in those areas because they don't have affordable housing. And so would he agree with me that it's very welcome that the government is focusing on the practical basis of what ordinary workers need to be employed, and that will help rural businesses like mine that are really struggling to recruit?
So forgive me, but I don't agree, because although I can see that transport connections and why the £2 bus link was so important, now of course gone up by 50% under this government, was absolutely crucial to helping small businesses survive in rural areas. What we're now seeing is we're seeing businesses that were taking in younger people, or starters effectively, are not hiring those starters because the cost of any change that may be needed in a business that may evolve or may shape itself differently means that effectively it's not worth the risk. Now, we see this again and again. The tragedy of this, actually, is I'm not telling this House anything new. The tragedy is this speech could have been given any time in the last 50 years, because the reality is we've tried all these experiments. We know how they work. They end up with rising unemployment, with rising debt burdens and fewer public services. We know where this goes. I'll give way to the honourable friend.
To my right honourable friend. The main point in all of this, though, is when the government imposed a national insurance increase on the businesses, there was the real problem. The second bit is, however, what they've done for those they might have taken on, new first starters, by lowering that threshold. That has been an absolute killer on both counts for them, and there's a reason why they're not taking them on at the moment.
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. The reality is what this government has done, and I understand it, they've decided to defend the established strength of unionised and employed workers. I get it, but they've chosen specifically to punish incoming workers, young people, and those who are trying to enter the labour market. Now, that's a choice. It's a choice they've made. They've also chosen to defend established businesses, those businesses that can pay a large amount for HR functions, rather than those smaller businesses that innovate and start up. Now, again, that's a choice. It's a choice that they've made. But let's not ignore the choice. The choice is they have chosen the large company, the institution, the established worker, and they've decided to punish the high street.